She stood bound to a weather-beaten fence post behind the saloon, arms hoisted above her head like a broken scarecrow. Barefoot, her feet sank into the ankle-deep mud. A threadbare muslin dress clung to her frame like soaked parchment, and her wrists were raw, blistered, where coarse rope dug into her skin each time she flinched. She looked 12, maybe younger, thin as a switch and quieter than the breeze. No one asked her name, no one cared to. Around her, men laughed, spat, gambled. Most weren't there for her. They came for the cards, the women upstairs, the cheap whiskey. But when a girl got strung up like that, plain in sight of the saloon, some men got curious, some got angry. The worst kind got interested. One of them leaned on a cracked hitching post, chewing jerky and squinting through the haze. "Gambler's kid," he muttered, "owes half the town, using her to pay what he can't win back at the table." He didn't sound surprised. No one did. Then the wind shifted, blowing the dust sideways, and through it came a rider. Tall in the saddle, coat frayed at the cuffs, hat tilted against the sun, eyes that didn't blink more than necessary. Jesse James, 40 years old. No wife, no sons, no daughters, just a ranch he barely kept alive by breaking himself in half every morning. He wasn't heading to town, not really, just meant to drop off some tools, maybe buy salt, nails. But when he rode past the alley and saw her, sunken cheeks, arms shaking from the effort of staying upright, his horse stopped before he even touched the reins. He stayed there a while, jaw clenched, reins slack, watching, listening. Then a voice rang out, $12 for the girl, 1 week's labor or permanent, your pick, she don't eat much. The girl didn't move, didn't lift her head. The gambler, thin, rank, missing half a grin, swaggered up and tugged the rope like she was livestock. "She can scrub, cook, clean, stronger than she looks, dumb as rocks, won't talk back." The crowd thinned, peeling away from the scene. Even for this town, it was too ugly. Then Jesse swung down from his horse. He didn't speak, didn't look at the gambler, just reached into his coat and pulled out a small cloth bundle, coins inside, clinking soft. The gambler narrowed his eyes. 15? Jesse nodded once. "For the week? Number permanent." A pause. "I ain't buying her, just paying your debt." The gambler chuckled. "Same difference." He tossed the rope into the dirt. "She's yours." Jesse didn't answer. He walked forward, pulled a pocket knife from his belt, and cut the girl loose. Her arms dropped too fast. She staggered. He caught her. Not rough, not gentle. She looked up at him, startled, then looked away. No tears, just those wide, hollow eyes. Eyes that stopped expecting kindness long ago. They rode out of town under a sky turning slate gray. She didn't ride behind him. Jesse let her guide the mule alone, reins tied loose to his saddle horn. She clung to it, white-knuckled, head turned away from the road. Behind them, dust lifted like the ghosts of things unsaid. Jesse James's ranch lay 10 miles west, cradled between rocky bluffs, cottonwoods bare from the cold. The barn leaned, half collapsed, roof still leaking from last storm. Chickens wandered loose. A fence post tilted like a snapped limb near the front gate. He hadn't fixed it. No time. The girl took it all in without a word. He led her inside. The house was small, plain. A pot of beans simmered on the stove, the only warmth in the room. A wool blanket lay folded on a cot near the hearth. He pointed. "Yours?" She didn't move. "You hungry?" She nodded. He ladled beans into a dented tin bowl and set it on the table. She sat, but didn't reach for it. Just stared like it was something strange. "You don't gotta rush," he said, voice softer now. She picked up the spoon, like it might break, careful not to spill. When she tasted it, her face twitched. Not from heat, from flavor. That's when he understood. She didn't know what it was to eat warm food sitting down. She didn't finish the bowl, just said, "Thank you." Her voice sounded like it came from inside the walls. He didn't ask questions, didn't tell stories, just lit the lamp, checked the fire, said, "I don't lock doors. You're safe here." She nodded, but didn't move. He stepped out to unhitch the mule. Night came fast, cold, wind sliding sharp through the canyon. Coyotes howled somewhere beyond the ridge. Jesse looked up at the stars, wondering what the hell he'd brought into his life. When he came back inside, she was asleep on the cot, curled tight, arms wrapped like she was still tied to something. Around midnight, a floorboard creaked. Jesse woke in his chair, hand on the rifle. She stood there, glassy-eyed. "Don't lock me in the barn," she whispered. He lowered the rifle. "I won't." She paused. "I've been locked before." He nodded. "I figured." Silently, she walked back to the cot and curled up again. She didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Neither did he. By morning, a thin layer of frost glazed the window pane. The sun rose behind the ridge, blood orange and low, casting long shadows across the kitchen floor. Jesse poured water into the kettle, his hands shaking just slightly. He told himself it was from the cold. Outside, a hawk wheeled against the pale sky. Inside, the girl still lay on the cot, eyes wide, fixed on the ceiling. Jesse James didn't know her story, didn't need to. He'd seen men do worse with less reason. What mattered was that the first thing she asked him wasn't for food or her name. It was not to be locked away. And maybe, for now, that was enough. She woke with the sun, though Jesse never told her when to rise. No bell, no voice, just instinct. The rhythm of a child who knew punishment followed if she guessed wrong. The blanket had slipped off sometime in the night, but she hadn't moved. She lay still, watching the morning light with a quiet breath, like she was testing whether warmth was something real. Jesse was already outside, splitting kindling beside the shed. His coat slung off one shoulder, every swing of the axe echoed like a warning shot into the canyon. The girl stood at the porch's edge, uncertain, unsure if she should ask permission or simply walk forward. She did neither. When he saw her, Jesse jerked his chin toward the coop. Chickens need feeding. Corn's in the sack. She obeyed, silent, barefoot, her toes disappearing into the frostbitten grass. By the time he had finished stacking wood, she had returned. Her hands were red from cold, bits of straw clinging to her dress. He half expected a complaint. None came. She just sat on the porch steps, knees pulled to her chest, eyes on the road like she was waiting for someone to come reclaim her. They didn't speak until breakfast. Jesse baked once a week, though his bread usually turned out hard as fence slats. This time, it was still warm, crust golden, scent sweet and strange in the small house, almost holy. He placed a piece on her plate with a spoonful of honey, watched her, pretended not to. She didn't move. "You can eat it." She glanced at him. "All of it?" He nodded. "Course, that's what it's for." Her hands hovered over the bread, like it might vanish if she touched it wrong. She tore off a small piece, held it to her lips, paused. "Should I save some for later?" He leaned back, letting the chair creak beneath him. "There'll be more later." She stared, suspicious of the answer. He didn't push, just rose, poured himself coffee, and stared out the window, like the land might offer some answer to the ache he couldn't name. After breakfast, she swept the floor 3 times, though it didn't need it. She scrubbed the stove, until the black iron gleamed, folded the same blanket again before dusk. Jesse tried to tell her it wasn't necessary, but every time he opened his mouth, her eyes widened, flinched like they braced for a belt that never came. "She don't know what to do with warm bread," he muttered that night, or silence. Over the following week, they fell into a rhythm, not comfort, but routine. She followed him to check the fence line, matched his pace, even when her legs shook from the effort. When she tripped on a rock and skinned her knee, she said nothing, just stood, wiped the blood with her hand. Jesse stopped, handed her a cloth. "Ain't ashamed to hurt." She nodded and kept quiet. On the fourth evening, he found her crouched beneath a wheelbarrow by the barn, not sleeping, just hiding. When he asked what she was doing, she whispered, "Just checking if the door locked from the outside." Jesse crouched beside her, voice low. "It don't. Nothing here does." She didn't answer, but the next night, she slept closer to the fire. A week passed, then another. The neighbors started asking questions. Hank Sutter, pausing at the well with his horse, nodded toward the house. "Who's the girl?" Jesse replied with a glance. "None of your concern." Sutter raised an eyebrow. "Didn't say it was. Just odd is all." "Odd don't mean wrong," Jesse answered, then walked away. By the third week, the girl had started humming, barely, quietly, only when she thought he wasn't close. A simple melody, off-key but steady, like a bird remembering how to sing. Jesse pretended not to notice. She never asked about his wife. The grave behind the barn had no name, just a stone, edges rounded smooth by weather. One morning, she left a flower there, a single Danesian, brittle and dry but placed gently. Later, Jesse asked, "You miss someone?" She didn't reply. But that night, as the fire crackled low, she whispered, "I had a brother, had nothing more." The days grew longer. Spring clawed its way in. Snow melted off the ridge, and birds returned to the cottonwoods, their songs echoing in the warm air. One morning, she found a robin's egg lay cracked in the grass. She picked it up, cupping the broken blue shell like something sacred, and carried it inside as though it might still hatch. Jesse watched her from the porch, thinking, she's been broken too, but she still holds things gentle. The first time she laughed, it slipped out by accident. Jesse had burned the cornbread to charcoal. Muttering, he said, "That loaf died in vain." She tried to keep a straight face, but the snort escaped before she could catch it. Then she froze, hand clapped over her mouth. Jesse didn't laugh, but he smiled. "'Bout time," he said. "Thought maybe you forgot how." She ducked her head, still grinning behind her palm. That month, they had only one visitor, a trap-mending tinker who'd played cards with Jesse in better times. He spotted the girl right off. "Hired help?" he asked. "No," Jesse said flatly. The man squinted. "Not your kin either." Jesse turned to her. "Go on inside, would you?" She obeyed. When the man looked back, Jesse's voice was iron. "You don't ask about her again." The tinker raised his hands. "Ain't my business." "Exactly," Jesse said. That night she stayed at the table longer than usual. Her voice was quiet, careful. "Will you sell me back?" Jesse blinked. "What?" "Men buy girls, then sell 'em again. That's how it works." He set his coffee down. "That ain't what happened." She tilted her head. "Then what was it?" He thought a while before answering. "I think I saw someone drowning, and maybe I was too. So I pulled you out." A pause. "And you pulled me too." She didn't reply, but she never asked again. On the 12th night, she handed him a folded slip of paper. "What's this?" he asked. "My name. You already told me. Not my real one." He unfolded the paper. 4 letters, shaky and small, but written like a promise. Lena. Jessie didn't speak for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right then, Lena." Her face lit up like she'd just been given permission to exist. The next morning, she brought in kindling, poured coffee, and set 2 plates without a word. When Jessie sat down, he found a slice of warm bread waiting for him. Hers, not his. She watched him as he bit into it. He chewed, raised an eyebrow. "Little dry." She smirked. "You didn't complain about mine." Jessie laughed for the first time since his wife's grave had gone untended. Outside, birds sang through the hills. Inside, the fire burned steady. And for the first time in years, Jesse James didn't eat breakfast alone. Not in his belly, and not in his bones. The wind turned mean the morning they came. Jesse felt it before the dust rose on the road. Birds went quiet. The air took on that tight, waiting stillness, like the land itself was holding breath. He was chopping wood when the dog growled, low and steady. Jesse stood straight, wiped his palms on his trousers, and looked east. 3 riders, coming slow. The kind of slow that meant they weren't in a rush, because they expected everyone else to be. Lena was inside, washing beans. She hadn't seen them yet. Jesse didn't call her. The men dismounted before reaching the gate. The first wore a preacher's collar, white and stiff despite the dust. His eyes held no kindness. The second was a deputy, badge dull and crooked, mustache trimmed too clean. The third, Jesse didn't need a name for him. The gambler's smirk, same eyes, sharp, cold, narrow. "Morning," Jesse said, voice even. The preacher stepped forward. "Mr. Boone." "That's right. I'm Reverend Hatch. This here's Deputy Slater, and that man is Mr. Caleb Dawes." Jesse nodded once, slow. "What brings you?" Caleb spat in the dirt. "My brother sold you something he had no right to." Jesse didn't blink. "He sold me a lie. Girl was tied to a fence post behind a saloon. I gave coin to cut her free." The deputy cleared his throat. "That coin didn't absolve anything. Legally, she's property, settled through a wager. There's paperwork." Jesse's voice cooled. "She ain't a mule. She's a child." Reverend Hatch folded his hands like in prayer, but his tone was sharp. "We're not here to argue philosophy. You're harboring stolen property. Without proof of guardianship, the child will be returned." Something inside Jesse went still. Not rage, not yet. Just a cold, knowing that these men had come with their minds made up. She's safer here than anywhere else. She eats, sleeps, ain't chained, ain't scared. "That don't make it legal," said the deputy. Lena stepped out onto the porch without a sound. Her sleeves were rolled up, apron dusted with flour, braid tucked over one shoulder. She looked small in the doorway, but she stood straight, still as a mountain. Caleb's eyes landed on her and curled into a smile that made Jesse's stomach tighten. "Lena," the preacher called, smooth as oil, "come here now. We'll take you home. This man's done his part." She didn't move. "Girl," Caleb snapped, "you belong to our family. You were promised." Jesse stepped in front of her. "She ain't going." Deputy Slater's hand twitched near his holster. "You sure you want to make this?" They reached the door, and Mara hesitated, her hand hovering above the latch, like it might burn her. Lena stood beside her, eyes steady, waiting. Jesse didn't rush them. The sun dipped low, brushing the ridge in gold, the kind of light that made everything look softer than it really was. Mara finally pushed the door open, and the hinges groaned like they remembered too. Inside, the air was stale with dust and old memories. The place hadn't been touched in years, just a cot in the corner, a table with one chair, and a rusted stove that looked like it might cough itself apart if asked to warm a pot. But it was theirs. That mattered. Mara crossed the threshold first, then Lena. Jesse stood in the doorway, hat in his hand, not sure whether to follow. He'd been many things: a soldier, a gambler, a husband, a man who once believed the world would give what you earned if you worked hard and kept your word. But he'd never been asked to stay. Not like this. Lena turned around, her voice clear. "Come in, Jesse." He stepped over the worn floorboards like they might reject his weight. But they held. He looked around, took it all in. "Needs a new roof," he said. Lena smiled. "We know." That first night, they didn't talk much. Jesse built a fire in the stove, coaxed it to life with pine needles and patience. Lena swept out the corners, her braids swinging like a metronome. Mara sat at the table, hands wrapped around a cup of warm water, like it was tea. Her eyes followed Lena with a hunger that wasn't about food. She'd been starved of her child's face, and now she couldn't get enough. Jesse didn't blame her. When the fire settled into its own rhythm, he stepped outside to listen to the wind. It carried the distant sound of coyotes and night birds, but no hooves, no riders, just peace, brittle and new. In the morning, Jesse repaired a broken shutter while Lena fetched water from the creek. Mara stirred cornmeal into something resembling porridge. She moved slow, like every joint carried a secret she didn't want to share. But she moved. That was something. Jesse showed Lena how to shore up the corner post, where the shack leaned hardest. They worked side by side without words, like always. Midday came warm, and they ate on the porch. Mara too, though she sat a little apart, as if unsure where she fit between them. Later, Jesse caught her watching him, when she thought he wasn't looking. Not suspicious, curious, like she was trying to figure out the kind of man who'd given a girl a home and asked nothing in return. On the third day, a storm rolled in, fierce and fast, the kind that shook doors and made the wind sound like a voice you almost recognized. They bolted the shutters and laid blankets along the floor to catch the leaks. Jesse sat with his back against the wall. Lena curled beside him, her head on his shoulder. Mara watched them from her cot, silent. When lightning lit the room in a white flicker, Jesse felt Lena flinch. "Just noise," he said softly. "It can't touch you in here." She didn't answer, but she didn't move either. When the thunder passed, Jesse thought maybe something else had too. Some weight, some fear, something that had kept them braced, even in quiet moments. By dawn, the storm was gone, and the roof had mostly held. Jesse patched what hadn't. A week became 2, then 3. Mara started humming when she cooked. Not songs Jesse knew, but low and sweet, like a memory trying to find its voice. Lena planted herbs along the ridge, called it her garden. Jesse fixed the windmill. It still creaked, but now it turned proper. One evening, Mara handed Jesse a mug of coffee without a word and sat beside him on the porch. They watched the sun fall into the hills. "You staying?" she asked finally. Jesse didn't answer right away. "Depends," he said. "On what?" she asked. "On whether she wants me to." Mara nodded, like she already knew the answer. They sat there a long time. Later that night, Lena brought out the hymn book again. She didn't read it, she sang. Just one verse, voice shaky but sure, rising in the firelight. Mara sat across from her, tears tracking down her cheeks, and Jesse closed his eyes, not to shut it out, but to feel it better. The sound of home being built from ash and silence. They never saw the preacher again, or the deputy, or Caleb Dawes with his gambler's smirk. Maybe they'd moved on to other towns, other girls, other sins. Maybe they just didn't have the stomach for a place where a man like Jesse James and a girl like Lena stood shoulder to shoulder and refused to let the world twist them. The law might have called it theft, but out here it was mercy, and mercy, like trust, takes root if you give it time. Legs splintered like bones, the seat cracked in two like someone wanted to make sure it couldn't ever rock another soul to sleep. Jesse stood over the ruin and felt something in his chest go still. Not rage, not yet, but a kind of mourning sharper than grief. The kind that tastes like rust and old blood. The quilt his wife made, stitched from dresses she used to wear, had been torn, half burned in the hearth, like a warning. Mara crossed herself and stepped back outside, unable to bear it. Lena, though, walked through the destruction without blinking. She picked up a mug off the floor, one Jesse had carved a pine handle for. The handle was cracked, but the rest held. She set it carefully on the table, like she meant to use it again, like this place hadn't been turned into a grave. "They were looking for us," Jesse said, voice low, "or trying to erase what we made." "Both," Lena answered. She knelt by the hearth and picked up what was left of the quilt. They didn't know this was stitched by a woman who prayed more than she slept. He watched her, that small figure, kneeling in ash, hair tangled, cheeks streaked with soot, and something older than dust. "They'll come back," he said. It wasn't a question. Lena nodded. "Then we should be ready." Jesse took a breath, the kind that scraped going in. "You ever shoot for real?" She stood, shoulders square. "Not yet." "Time to learn," he said. Outside, the mule brayed, restless. The wind still stank of burned oil and scorched ground, but underneath it there was the thinnest edge of clean rain scent curling in from the north. Jesse followed the smell like it might mean something good was on its way, even if it was late. Mara was sitting on the porch steps, hands in her lap like she was trying not to wring them raw. "I thought we got away," she whispered when Jesse passed. "I thought the fire was it." "They don't care about ash," Jesse said. "Only what still stands." That night, they didn't sleep. Jesse sat cleaning his rifle by the fire, checking the sights, oiling the parts, like a man trying to remember who he used to be. Mara mended the edges of the burned quilt, thread pulled from the hem of her skirt. Lena sharpened the skinning knife with long, even strokes, the sound rhythmic and sure. When she looked up, her eyes met Jesse's. "They tried to burn it down," she said, "but they don't know what they lit." He smiled, not kindly. "Let's show 'em." They spent the next 2 days rebuilding what they could and preparing for what they couldn't stop. Jesse dug out the hidden cartridges from under the floorboard he'd laid himself. He taught Lena how to set a trip line with broken glass and string. He set one at the north fence, the other by the trail where the sagebrush grew thick. "They won't come honest," he told her, "so neither will we." Mara made tea from what was left of the herbs she'd saved. She hummed when she stirred it, a song Jesse didn't recognize, but it steadied his hands just the same. The night before they expected company, Lena sat beside Jesse and laid something in his lap. It was the drawing, the one that survived the fire. She had pressed it between 2 boards so it would flatten again. "Still here," she said. He looked at it, the red house, the woman, the girl. The color had faded, but the lines were strong. "That's still what you want?" he asked. She didn't hesitate. "It's what we've got." Jesse folded the picture carefully, like something sacred, and slid it into his coat. "Then that's what we'll protect." When the dawn came, it was gray and cold. Mist moved low over the ground. No birds sang. Just the sound of Mara pouring coffee, Lena buckling her boots, and Jesse loading his rifle with hands that no longer trembled. They heard the horses before they saw them. Just two this time, but Jesse knew better than to relax. Men like Caleb Dawes didn't need a crowd to be dangerous. They just needed time. And Jesse wasn't planning on giving him any. He stepped off the porch with the rifle slung easy over his shoulder. Lena stood in the doorway, Mara just behind her. The riders stopped a few yards off. Caleb raised a hand, like they were friends meeting for coffee. "Thought I'd find you here," he said. "Didn't figure you'd survive the fire." "We did," Jesse replied. "More than you wanted." Caleb's smile thinned. "I just came for what's mine." "She was never yours," Jesse said. "Not her, not this place, and you burned what you don't own." The other man, a wiry one with a toothpick hanging from his lips, snorted. "You going to make this hard, Boone?" "No," Jesse said calmly. "I'm going to make it final." He lifted the rifle just enough to let them see it wasn't for show. Caleb's eyes flicked to the porch, saw Lena standing with a shotgun resting at her side, not shaking, not blinking. Caleb's smile wavered. "You willing to shoot a man, little girl?" he asked. She didn't answer, just set her stance and curled her finger near the trigger. "Don't test her," Jesse warned. "She ain't the one who should be afraid." The wind picked up then, sharp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and coming rain. Caleb hesitated. The other man looked back at the trail, clearly wondering if it was worth the risk. It wasn't. Caleb spat in the dirt. "This ain't done." Jesse shrugged. "It is for you." They rode off. No shots fired, no blood spilled, but something had ended anyway. When the dust settled, Lena finally exhaled. Mara wept again. Not from fear this time, but something older. Jesse lowered the rifle and looked at the two women standing in the doorway. "What now?" Lena asked. "Now," Jesse said, "we rebuild it right." Jesse James was the person you save might just save you. ChatGPT said, "That's a powerful, poetic ending, rich with grit, heart, and quiet redemption." The closing lines wrap the narrative with a profound sense of earned healing, a theme rooted not in dramatic salvation, but in the everyday work of survival, community, and the courage to stay when it's easier to run. The arc completes beautifully. Lena's transformation from frightened child to unshakable young woman is both believable and hard-won. Jesse's quiet strength and steady hand provide the backbone the others lean on. He never oversteps, never claims, just supports until she's standing on her own. Mara's grief and resilience, her lullaby at the fire, offers a thread of softness in the soot. And then that final image, Lena riding into town years later, her name her own, called Boone, not as a label of ownership, but as one of earned respect. That's the story's true reward. Fire only changes everything if something new is waiting in the ash. That line seals it. It turns the fire from tragedy to forge. It gives the reader or listener a reason to believe that what feels like the end can actually be a beginning. If you're strong enough to sift through the ash and start again. Would you like to expand this into a full-length novella or keep it in episodic format for your videos? It could branch into a future where Lena runs the ranch alone, then faces new threats. Jesse's past catching up to him, a return of Caleb, years later, changed or not.